License and registration. Is this your vehicle?
Yes, officer. They are in the glove compartment.
The flashing red and blue lights fractured the night like a wound opening in the dark. Judge Malcolm Reese slowed his Lexus to the shoulder of Highway 81, heart steady, face unreadable. The rain hissed on the windshield, wipers beating time to a ritual he knew too well. He rolled the window halfway down before the officer even approached. The flashlight beam hit his face, then his hands. The young cop's jaw tightened, a reflex older than the badge on his chest. License and registration, not a greeting. A verdict. Malcolm handed them over without a word. The officer's eyes flicked to the name on the license, lingered, then narrowed. You some kind of official? I'm heading home from court. The cop leaned in closer, breath sour with suspicion. That's so? Court of what? Malcolm's silence hung between them, not defiance, just exhaustion carved into restraint. The officer's hand rested on his holster, a performance rehearsed in countless traffic stops like this. Step out of the vehicle. A truck roared by, spraying grit and water over Malcolm's suit. The judge exhaled once. Slow, he opened the door. His polished shoe touched the wet asphalt like a sentence being pronounced. Behind him, the dashcam blinked, a small red light recording everything, or maybe nothing at all. Then the radio crackled. A voice, Unit 12, confirmed stop location. Suspect vehicle registered to Judge Malcolm Reese, 11th District Court. The flashlight froze. The officer's face drained of color. His hand hovered mid-air. Malcolm met his eyes, calm, deliberate. Still want me to step out? The rain fell harder, washing nothing away. Rain whispered on the hood of the Lexus, the road slick and gleaming under the sodium lights. Judge Malcolm Reese drove carefully, hands at 10 and 2. Every motion controlled, the kind of control a lifetime teaches you to maintain when you can't afford mistakes. He saw the patrol car's lights, too late to question why. Reflex took over, signal, slow pull to the shoulder, engine off, hands visible. The door of the cruiser opened. Out stepped Officer Ryan Blake Young, broad-shouldered, the rain flattening his buzz. His flashlight sliced the dark. Evening, sir. License and registration. Malcolm handed them over. His voice was calm. Of course. Officer Blake scanned the eyes, narrowing. Malcolm Reese. That name's supposed to mean something. Malcolm didn't answer. His silence was deliberate, not submission, but the quiet that comes from years of watching tempers ruin men. Blake leaned closer. You realize you were going 5 over the limit. I was under the posted limit for most of the drive. That's so. Mind stepping out so we can talk about it properly? Malcolm hesitated. Am I being detained? Blake's smirk tightened. Not yet. A car passed, horn blaring. Blake stepped back, hand near his weapon. The tension in the air thickened. Not loud, not chaotic, but electric. Like the pause before thunder. Malcolm opened the door, slow and careful. His polished shoe met the pavement. Turn around, Blake ordered. For what reason? Officer safety. The words fell flat. Official. Rehearsed. Malcolm raised his hands. Turned. Rain slid down the back of his neck. He heard Blake mutter something into his radio. Another cruiser pulled up behind them, lights strobing red across the wet highway. A second officer approached. What we got? Driver claims he's a judge, Blake said. Out past curfew. Driving suspiciously slow. I wasn't aware slow driving was suspicious, Malcolm said quietly. Depends on who's behind the wheel. Blake shot back. The second officer glanced at the license, blinked. Reese wait, as in 11th District. Yeah, says so on the plate frame too. Blake frowned. Could be fake. Or, Malcolm said evenly, it could be that you've made a serious mistake. The rain picked up. Dashcams blinked. Run it, Blake ordered. The second officer retreated to the cruiser. Malcolm stood still. Every instinct screamed to speak, to assert authority. But another instinct, older, colder, told him silence was his only defense. Minutes stretched. Blake paced. You judges think laws don't apply to you. I've seen your type, think you're untouchable. I think, Malcolm said slowly, that the law applies to everyone, including you. Static from the radio. Then a voice. Unit 12. Confirmed stop location. Suspect vehicle. Registered to Judge Malcolm Reese, 11th District Court. Blake froze. The second officer's eyes widened. Malcolm turned slightly, meeting Blake's gaze. Now you know. The younger man's mouth worked, searching for protocol, apology, anything. None came. I didn't realize you didn't want to, Malcolm said. Silence swallowed the road. Blake finally stepped back, stammering, "You can go, sir." Malcolm didn't move. "I will, after you explain to your dashcam why you stopped me." Blake's face tightened. "What? Say it," Malcolm said softly. "Say what you saw that made me worth stopping." For a moment, only Rain answered. Then Blake muttered, "Driver matched a description." "Who's—" No response. Malcolm got back in his car, shut the door. He didn't look back as he drove off, just watched the lights fade in the mirror, two small wounds in the dark. The wipers beat. His phone buzzed, a message from his clerk. "Emergency meeting request, media inquiry." He exhaled once, long. The storm outside wasn't finished. The video hit the local news less than 12 hours later. 38 seconds of dashcam footage, cropped and captioned. "Highway stop turns tense between officer and local judge." The anchor spoke with careful neutrality, but the subtext dripped through tone, phrasing, the quiet disbelief that this had even happened. By noon, the clip had over 2 million views. In the judge's kitchen, the television glowed faint blue against the tile. Evelyn Reese stood by the counter, arms folded tight, coffee untouched. "Malcolm, it's everywhere." He adjusted his tie in silence. The broadcast replayed the stop, slowed down the moment Blake reached for his holster. The look in Malcolm's eyes, the pause before the radio confirmed his title. Evelyn turned the volume down. "They're calling it a misunderstanding." He nodded once. "That's what they call it when the wrong person ends up on camera." "You can't go public," she said, voice low. "It'll make things worse. For you, for your court." "I haven't said a word. Promise me you won't." He looked at her reflection in the window, her fear, her exhaustion, both sharper than his own. "I promise to think first." Her breath caught. "That's not the same." The phone rang. His clerk, Andrew. "Judge, you need to come in. There's media outside the courthouse. The Chief Justice wants to see you privately." Malcolm ended the call without reply. He grabbed his coat, raincoat still damp from the night before. Outside, cameras already lined the sidewalk. Reporters called his name. Microphones jutted like spears. "Judge Reese, did you provoke the officer? Do you plan to file a complaint? Do you believe race played a role?" He kept walking. His silence wasn't weakness. It was armor. Inside the courthouse, the marble corridors felt colder than usual. Andrew met him at the security checkpoint. "They're trying to get ahead of it," Andrew whispered. "The department issued a statement," said the officer. "Followed standard procedure." Malcolm stopped midst. "He drew on me. I know, but they're saying you appeared non-compliant." Malcolm almost smiled. That word again. They reached the Chief Justice's office. Justice Wilcox, silver-haired, composed, politically cautious, gestured for him to sit. "Malcolm, this is a mess," Wilcox began. "The department's under scrutiny. The governor's office is asking for calm, and we need to protect the court's reputation." "I wasn't aware my existence endangered it." Wilcox sighed. "You know how these things spiral. I suggest a statement, brief, neutral. Express confidence in the review process. Avoid assigning blame." Malcolm met his gaze. "You want me to reassure people that I trust the same system that just humiliated me. That system is what allows us to serve." He rose slowly. "Then maybe it's time we stop pretending it serves everyone." Wilcox's expression hardened. "Be careful, Malcolm. The law is blind, but politics isn't." Outside, Andrew whispered, "You're trending again." "I don't care. You will. They've already leaked your salary, your cases, your home address." Malcolm stopped walking. Someone on the force. "Comments are ugly." Evelyn's getting messages. The hallway blurred around him, voices, footsteps, the steady buzz of phones, all of it folding into white noise. That evening, he returned home to find Evelyn watching the news in the dark. Her eyes were red. They called the house. Reporters, and others. He sat beside her. The footage replayed again, over and over, dissected by talking heads. One guest, a retired officer, spoke sharply. "People forget. Compliance saves lives." The officer couldn't have known who he was dealing with. Evelyn muted the screen. "That's how they talk about us." He didn't answer. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered, a man's voice. "Judge Reese, this is Captain Holbrook, Internal Affairs. We'd like to take your statement. Off the record, of course." Malcolm's tone was steady. "No, on the record. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. "Judge, that's not." He ended the call. Evelyn turned to him. "What are you doing?" "Stopping them from writing my story for me." Malcolm, please, they'll twist it, maybe. But if silence was enough, it would have protected me last night. She looked at him for a long time, eyes soft but heavy. You're not fighting one man, you're fighting a wall. He stood, adjusting his cuff. Then I'll start with a crack. Outside, the rain began again, softer now, but relentless. On the TV, the anchor's voice returned, muted but visible through captions. Judge Malcolm Reese breaks silence tomorrow. Exclusive statement expected. Evelyn's whisper followed him down the hall. They'll come for you. He didn't answer. He already knew they would. The internal affairs conference room smelled faintly of stale coffee and new paper. Bureaucracy's cologne. Judge Malcolm Reese sat at the long table, flanked by 2 department attorneys. Across from him, Captain Holbrook adjusted his glasses. The kind of man who had learned to sound apologetic without ever meaning it. Judge Reese Holbrook began. We appreciate your cooperation. We just want the facts so we can ensure fairness for all parties. Fairness, Malcolm repeated, voice flat. Let's try it. Holbrook pressed a button. The dashcam footage played again. Malcolm watched himself on screen, soaked in rain, calm but cornered. The moment replayed where Blake's hand hovered over his weapon. Now, Officer Blake, Holbrook said, reported that he believed you were reaching for something under your seat. Malcolm's gaze stayed on the monitor. I never moved my hands from the wheel. The camera shows that. Holbrook smiled without warmth. Cameras don't always capture perspective. You understand that, I'm sure. Malcolm turned to the attorneys. Is this a review or a rehearsal for the department's defense? One lawyer shifted in his chair. Judge, the process takes time. The officer's record is clean. Until last week, Malcolm said. Holbrook leaned forward. You're not helping yourself by implying bias, sir. Malcolm's eyes flicked to him. You think I'm the one who needs help. The silence that followed was heavy, sterile. Finally, Holbrook closed the file. We'll conclude our internal review within 30 days. I'm sure the community will appreciate your patience. Malcolm stood. They've been patient for centuries. He left the room without waiting for dismissal. Outside the precinct, reporters swarmed again. He ignored their shouts, moving toward the car. Andrew was waiting in the driver's seat. Anything new? Andrew asked. They've already decided, Malcolm said. About the officer, about me. Andrew exhaled. They're calling Blake a hero online. People saying he kept his cool under pressure. Malcolm stared out the window. Pressure, that's what they call suspicion now. Across town, Officer Ryan Blake sat in a cramped union office, surrounded by his supporters. A middle-aged sergeant clapped him on the shoulder. You did nothing wrong, son. Don't let the media spin it. You stopped a car, asked questions, did your job. Blake nodded, jaw tight. They're saying I targeted him. You followed procedure. Another officer muttered. If he wasn't a judge, nobody would care. Blake's lips twitched. Exactly. A union rep slid a folder across the table. The department's crafting an official statement. You'll be framed as cooperative. Stay off social media. Keep quiet. We'll handle the noise. Blake glanced at the papers. And him? What about him? He's going public. He'll ruin me. The rep's expression sharpened. He won't. The narrative's on our side. People trust blue over black robes. The words sank in. Blake didn't smile, but his shoulders eased. 2 days later, Malcolm's mailbox overflowed with letters, half supportive, half venom. Evelyn sorted them silently at the kitchen table. You shouldn't read these, she said. I need to know what they're saying. She pushed one envelope toward him. This one says they hope you lose your seat, that you're playing the race card. He read it once, folded it neatly. They always say that when you refuse to bow. The phone rang again, a familiar voice this time, Chief Wilcox. Malcolm, I have to ask, are you sure you want to make a statement? The mayor's office is pressuring for calm. They're afraid of protests. Protests are what happen when calm fails. Please, for everyone's sake, good night, Chief. He hung up. The next morning, the city paper ran a headline above the fold. Judge's traffic stop sparks investigation officer. Lauded for professionalism. Evelyn read it aloud, tone brittle. Professionalism. Malcolm sipped his coffee, unflinching. That's the word they use when they can't say guilty. By afternoon, the department's public relations unit held a press conference. Cameras clicked. Holbrook stood behind the podium. Voice smooth as oil. We remind the community that Officer Blake acted in accordance with protocol. We also recognize Judge Reese's cooperation. The department remains committed to fairness, transparency, and public trust. Questions erupted. Will the officer face suspension? Was racial bias a factor? Holbrook smiled. We don't rush judgment. Watching from his office, Malcolm turned off the TV. Evelyn stood in the doorway. They've locked arms around him. He nodded. The blue line never breaks. It bends around itself. She sat beside him. What are you going to do? He leaned back, eyes closed. I'm going to write everything down, every call, every word, every lie. If they want to bury truth under paperwork, I'll make the paperwork heavier. Evelyn reached for his hand. They'll hate you for it. He opened his eyes. They already do. Outside, sirens echoed faintly, not warning, not rescue, just the sound of power circling itself. The courthouse hallways buzzed with whispers, not the open kind, the quiet, sideways ones that carried weight without ever naming it. When Judge Reese walked past, voices dropped mid-sentence, glances lingered too long, and polite smiles sharpened at the edges. By the third day, he stopped pretending not to notice that Andrew followed close behind, tablet in hand. They reassigned your traffic cases. All of them. Yes, sir. The Chief Justice said it's temporary, pending the review outcome. Malcolm's jaw flexed. Punishment, disguised as precaution. They're calling it conflict mitigation. He almost laughed. Conflict's what they fear most. Not injustice, not corruption. Conflict. In his chambers, stacks of letters from the public sat unopened. Some began with Dear Hero, others with You're the Problem. Both carried the same exhaustion disguised as opinion. A knock on the door. Evelyn. Her face was pale, lips pressed tight. We need to talk. He gestured for Andrew to step out. When the door closed, she set her purse down slowly. They followed me. Who? 2 men. Unmarked car. I went to the store. They parked near the exit, waited until I came out. One took a picture. Didn't even try to hide it. His body stilled. License plate. No, I didn't think to. It's all right. She shook her head. It's not. This is getting out of control. It already was. Her eyes glistened. Please, Malcolm, stop pushing. You can't fight a machine that big. He met her gaze. If I stop, it wins. She exhaled shakily. You think justice will save you, but justice only protects itself. He said nothing. Later that afternoon, he was summoned to the Judicial Oversight Board, an emergency session. The panel looked like a painting. 3 white men, 1 white woman, and a single empty chair at the end of the table. Judge Reese, the chairman began, we're concerned about the public perception of your recent involvement in an ongoing police inquiry. Involvement, Malcolm said. I was stopped and humiliated on camera. Yes, but your subsequent media attention has created tension between institutions. He leaned forward. Truth creates tension. Lies maintain peace. The chairman frowned. We urge restraint. The law requires impartiality, not activism. I'm impartial toward race, not toward falsehood. A murmur rippled through the board. The woman finally spoke. You've been one of our most respected judges. Don't throw that away for a headline. Malcolm rose. I didn't seek headlines. The camera found me. The system you defend created the story. He left before dismissal. Across town, Officer Blake sat in a downtown diner with his attorney, sipping black coffee, sunglasses hiding sleepless eyes. They're saying the judge might file a civil suit, his lawyer said. Blake scoffed. On what grounds? Defamation, possibly misconduct. I didn't do anything illegal. The lawyer's expression didn't shift. Maybe not illegal, just indefensible. Blake's hand tightened around the cup. He wants to ruin me. He's using race as a weapon. Or truth as one, the lawyer said quietly. Be careful which version you defend. Blake stared out the window. You think I'm the villain here. I think you made a choice, the lawyer replied, and now the world's watching it in slow motion. Back in his chambers, Malcolm sat at his desk surrounded by files, each one a record of prior police complaints dismissed under insufficient evidence. He read them in silence, tracing patterns the city refused to see, same phrases, same rationalizations, same disappearances into bureaucracy. Andrew entered quietly. You're compiling evidence, patents, Malcolm said. History doesn't change unless it's forced to look at itself. Andrew hesitated. Sir, the Chief Justice asked if you'd consider recusing yourself from any future police-related cases. Malcolm's pen stopped. Why? He said. You might appear biased now. He looked up slowly. Biased against what? Abuse. Andrew said nothing. That night, Malcolm and Evelyn sat at opposite ends of the dining table. The air between them was heavier than the silence. I miss who we were, she said softly. He looked up. You mean before the camera, before it reminded me how dangerous your silence always was. He set down his fork. You want me to stop? I want you alive. He reached across the table, but she didn't move. 2 days later, a letter arrived in an unmarked envelope. Inside, photocopies of internal police emails. Subject line, Incident report, stop. One line underlined in red. Recommend framing event as procedural error, not biased. Protect department image. Malcolm stared at it for a long time. The truth was finally written, hidden in bureaucratic language, but real. He looked toward the window where the city skyline glimmered under rain. Evelyn's voice echoed from the hall. Who's it from? He folded the pages carefully. Someone inside the wall. For the first time in weeks, his voice carried something new. Not anger, not fear, certainty. That night, a small light glowed from his study. He sat writing, each word deliberate. Names, dates, quotes, memos, the beginning of something that couldn't be spun into silence. On the final line, he wrote, "Justice begins when patience ends." He turned off the lamp. The rain outside hadn't stopped, it just learned how to whisper differently. The conference chamber of the internal review board smelled of old varnish and unease. A row of microphones faced the witness table. Behind it sat Malcolm Rees, straight-backed expression unreadable. Cameras lined the walls, flashes like tiny explosions in the stale air. "Judge Rees," the moderator began, "thank you for appearing voluntarily." Malcolm nodded once. "I wasn't given much choice." A low ripple of laughter, quickly stifled, to his left. Officer Ryan Blake sat in uniform, a silver pin polished bright. He looked younger than the night of the stop, or maybe just more hollow. His lawyer whispered something. Blake nodded, jaw tight. "Let's begin," the moderator said. "We'll review the incident, then both parties will answer questions." The footage began to play again. The dashcam filled the projector screen, casting the two men's faces in alternating light and shadow. Malcolm watched himself stand in the rain, silent, waiting. He'd seen it so many times that it no longer looked like him, just a man caught between disbelief and restraint. When it ended, the moderator turned to him. "Judge Rees, can you describe your state of mind during this interaction?" Malcolm's voice was level, cautious, controlled, familiar with danger. "And by danger, you mean," he met the man's eyes, "the kind that wears authority and expects obedience." Blake shifted in his seat. "With respect, I wasn't a danger to anyone. I was doing my job." Malcolm turned to him. "Your job was to serve, not to presume guilt." Blake's lawyer interjected. "Judge Rees, you can't assign motive." "I don't need to," Malcolm said quietly. "It's in the footage." The room stilled. The moderator cleared his throat. "Let's proceed. Officer Blake, your report states you stopped the vehicle because it matched a description. What description was that?" Blake hesitated. "A late model, Lexus, dark color, male driver." "Any further detail?" "No, sir." Malcolm leaned forward. "How many Lexus sedans were on that highway that night?" Blake didn't answer. "Enough," Malcolm said, "that the only description left was me." The moderator intervened quickly, tone neutral. "We'll move on. Officer Blake, did you feel threatened during the encounter?" Blake's voice hardened. "Yes." He wouldn't answer questions directly. "I thought he might be hiding something." Malcolm exhaled. "What I was hiding was disbelief." A murmur ran through the audience. During recess, Malcolm stood by the window, looking down at the reporters gathered outside. Rain again, as if the city refused to let the air clear. Andrew joined him. "They're saying the board's already made up its mind." "Of course they have," Malcolm said. "They don't convene hearings to find truth. They convene them to control fallout." "Then why testify?" He turned from the window. "Because the record matters. Someday, someone will read the transcript and see how carefully the truth was buried." The hearing resumed. Blake's defense called a character witness, Sergeant Daniels, his former supervisor. "Officer Blake has served honorably for 6 years, Daniels declared. "He's never shown racial bias. He's a good cop." Malcolm watched, expression steady. "Good men can still serve bad habits." The sergeant bristled. "You calling me biased?" "I'm saying you trained him," Malcolm replied. "You taught him what to see and what to ignore." The audience gasped. The moderator slammed the gavel for order. "Judge Rees, this is not a courtroom." "Everything's a courtroom," Malcolm said softly. "Some just pretend they're not." Hours later, closing statements, the moderator folded his hands. "The board acknowledges that no physical harm occurred. The officer acted under perceived threat, though judgment may have been impaired. We recommend sensitivity training and departmental review." That was it. No reprimand, no accountability, Just a sanitized conclusion. Malcolm's jaw set, but he didn't move. The gavel fell. The crowd rose in restless waves, half murmuring outrage, half relief. Cameras flashed again. Blake stood, adjusting his badge, looking across the table. Their eyes met the weight of two men who would never see the world through the same lens. Blake spoke first, voice low enough for only Malcolm to hear. Guess you got your attention. Malcolm didn't blink. Guess you got your freedom. He turned and walked out before anyone could stop him. Outside, reporters swarmed again. Questions collided in the air. Judge Reese, how do you feel about the decision? Do you believe justice was served? Are you planning legal action? He didn't answer any of them. He kept walking until he reached the courthouse steps, the same building where he'd sworn oaths to fairness that now felt ornamental. Evelyn waited at the bottom of the stairs, umbrella trembling in her hand. Her eyes asked a question, her mouth didn't. He shook his head once. She looked down, rain dripping from her lashes. They didn't even pretend to care. They cared, he said quietly, just not about the truth. She stepped closer, touched his arm. You can stop now. I can't, he said. They wrote the ending, and it's wrong. The crowd around them shouted, cameras flashing like lightning. Somewhere, in the distance, thunder rolled, the kind that waits before it breaks everything open. The morning after the hearing, the city woke to headlines that weren't supposed to exist. Internal memos leak. Police officials coordinated Reese's case narrative. It began as a single post on an independent news site. Within hours, it spread everywhere. Screenshots, email threads, redacted names. The documents revealed that the department's review had been scripted weeks in advance. Phrases like protect institutional credibility and avoid disciplinary optics circulated in every memo. Malcolm read the article twice before setting his phone down. He didn't smile. He didn't move. Evelyn stood at the doorway. You didn't leak it. No. Then who did? Someone who finally got tired of lying. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up. Judge Reese. This is Maya Torres from the Sentinel. I need to confirm authenticity. We believe the leak came from inside the department. Do what you need to, Malcolm said. I have nothing to add. Off the record, there is no off the record anymore. He ended the call. By noon, the department's press conference had turned into a defensive scramble. Captain Holbrook's voice quavered slightly for the first time. These documents are being taken out of context. Internal discussions do not reflect official findings, a reporter shot back. So you admit they're real? Holbrook hesitated. Cameras zoomed in on his silence. Meanwhile, across the city, Officer Blake sat in his apartment, phone buzzing nonstop. Messages poured in from union reps, fellow officers, family. Keep your head down. Don't respond to media. Lawyer up. He hurled the phone across the couch. The television replayed the headline again. His own name appeared in a sidebar under the phrase key participant in mishandled inquiry. He muttered, they're throwing me under. At the courthouse, Andrew burst into Malcolm's office, eyes wide. It's chaos out there. They're suspending Holbrook. The chief's considering resignation. Malcolm said nothing, just turned a page in the file before him. Double quotes, sir. This is it. They're breaking. No, Malcolm said quietly. They're retreating. The difference is important. Andrew frowned. You don't sound relieved. Because I know how institutions survive. They sacrificed one piece to save the board. That evening, a journalist knocked on the Reese's door. Maya Torres' raincoat, tired eyes, voice sharp with conviction. Judge Reese, I know you don't want interviews, but people deserve to hear your side before the department rewrites this again. Evelyn looked to her husband. Please don't. Malcolm studied the journalist's face, young, determined, the kind that hadn't yet learned what truth costs. If I speak, he said, you print every word. No edits, no framing. Maya nodded. Agreed. He gestured. Her inside. The interview lasted 2 hours. No theatrics, no speeches, just facts. The stop, the silence, the humiliation, the hearing. When she asked what he wanted now, he paused before answering. I want honesty to mean something again. And what if it doesn't? She asked. Then at least history will know who lied first. She left with pages of notes and a voice recorder full of measured fury. By dawn, the Sentinel published her article. Judge Reese breaks silence. Truth doesn't need permission. It hit harder than any press release. The department's internal chaos leaked further. Statements withdrawn, emails deleted, servers under maintenance. Officer Blake arrived at headquarters to find his badge suspended, pending further review. He stormed into Holbrook's empty office, shouting at the secretary. He said he'd protect me. He resigned this morning, she said softly. Bafta Blake stood still for a moment, realization settling like cold water. So that's it? I'm the scapegoat. She didn't answer. Across town, Malcolm sat alone in his study, TV muted. The screen displayed his own face, frozen mid-sentence from the interview. Beneath it, a ticker read, "Public demands independent oversight." Evelyn entered quietly. It's everywhere. People are marching downtown. They're chanting your name. He shook his head. They're not chanting for me. They're chanting for what they thought justice meant. She touched his shoulder gently. Isn't that enough? He looked up at her. It should be, but truth without consequence is just noise. Outside, through the window, distant sirens echoed. Not urgent, just constant. The city was awake now, restless, raw, and somewhere in a dim newsroom basement, another whistleblower drafted the next leak. This one larger, riskier, inevitable. Malcolm closed the blinds. He didn't need to see the storm anymore to know it had arrived. Rain fell in steady sheets, blurring the courthouse steps into silver streaks. Reporters pressed against barricades, shouting questions over the thunder. The city had become a theater of reckoning. Live feeds, flashing lights, faces caught, mid-anger or awe. Malcolm Reese walked up those steps again, the same path where his public life had nearly been erased months earlier. Only this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him, civil rights lawyers, clergy members, and students held signs. Accountability is not revenge. Justice wears no uniform. A journalist's voice cut through the chaos. Judge Reese, what's your response to Officer Blake's indictment? He stopped but didn't turn. No one wins in a system that teaches violence and calls it procedure. The microphones buzzed. Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere was brittle. Cameras had been banned. Only sketches and transcripts would remain. Officer Daniel Blake sat at the defense table, jaw tight, uniform exchanged for a dark suit. His attorney whispered rapidly, but Blake's eyes stayed locked on the judge's bench, not Malcolm's. He wasn't presiding. He'd recused himself, but his presence, seated quietly in the gallery, was louder than any gavel. Holbrook, too, had been subpoenaed. He looked older now. Shoulders collapsed inward. Years of command replaced by the tremor of self-preservation. The prosecutor began. This case is not about one man's mistake. It is about a culture that mistook arrogance for authority, Blake's lawyer countered. My client followed training. Fault lies with policy, not with him. Malcolm watched as each argument twisted truth like wire, sharp, flexible, never breaking. During recess, Blake approached the bench area under escort. His eyes flicked to Malcolm. You happy now? He hissed under his breath. Malcolm didn't move. Justice isn't happiness. Blake's voice cracked. You ruined my life for one mistake. Malcolm leaned forward slightly. You didn't ruin mine for one mistake. You ruined it for believing I wasn't human. The guard pulled Blake back before the exchange drew attention. Outside, the storm worsened. Protesters chanted under umbrellas. Some shouted for conviction, others for reform. A counterline had formed across the street, waving blue-striped flags and shouting support. Our officers. The air smelled of wet cardboard, coffee, and tension. Inside the courtroom, testimony continued. Body cam footage, procedural memos, the leaked communications now officially verified. Each word was another crack in the institution's facade. By afternoon, the verdict was in. Guilty misconduct, abuse of authority, falsification of report. Not prison, probation, mandatory resignation, loss of pension. The room reacted in a low, collective exhale, too light for some, too heavy for others. Blake's mother wept. His lawyer bowed his head. Holbrook exited without looking back. Malcolm rose slowly. He could feel the eyes of everyone on him, waiting for some reaction. There was none, only the silence of something ending without closure. That evening, Evelyn found him sitting on their porch, rain dripping off the roof, a cup of untouched tea cooling beside him. You should feel something, she said softly. I do, he replied, just not what people expect. She waited. I wanted justice, he said, but what I got was exposure. It's not the same thing. You made them answer for it. For now, he said, systems don't die. They adapt. They learn how to hide better. Evelyn knelt beside him. Then you keep making them show themselves again. He looked at her, tired, proud, and profoundly aware of how little peace truth provides. At what cost? Evie. She didn't answer. The rain filled the silence. Later that night, The city news replayed clips of the day's protests. A young woman, Maya Torres, stood before a crowd, microphone trembling slightly. "This isn't the end of one story," she said. "It's proof that truth doesn't vanish just because it makes people uncomfortable." Her voice wavered, then steadied. "Judge Reese taught us something. Silence is complicity, and we've been silent long enough." The crowd roared. Malcolm watched from his living room. No pride, no relief, only recognition. The movement had passed him now, as it should. He switched off the television. Outside, sirens wailed again, distant, rhythmic, eternal. He whispered to no one, "Let them keep the noise. I'll keep the memory." Morning light cut through the blinds like sharp, deliberate stripes. The courthouse square was quieter now. No cameras, no chants, just rain-warped posters clinging to lamps. The storm had moved on, but the echo of it still lived in the city's pulse. Malcolm Reese stood at his window, tying his necktie out of habit. Though he wasn't going to court, his term had ended. The resignation letter lay signed on the desk, one page, no ornament, no apology. Evelyn entered, holding 2 mugs. "You don't have to do this today." "I do," he said. "If I wait, it turns into someone else's decision." She set the coffee down, quiet. "The papers called you a symbol this morning." He exhaled slowly. "Symbols don't sleep. They don't eat. They don't heal. I'm just a man who got tired of being misidentified." He adjusted the tie once more, then left the room without another word. Outside, downtown still bore the marks of upheaval, boarded windows, chalk messages fading in the drizzle. Truth costs something. We saw what they tried to hide. He walked past them all. No one stopped him. Most didn't even recognize him without the robe, without the cameras. That anonymity, oddly, felt closer to freedom than anything else. At a corner cafe, Maya Torres sat typing at a window seat, eyes fixed on her screen. She looked up, startled. "Judge Reese, just Malcolm," he interrupted. She smiled faintly. "I didn't think I'd see you here. I thought you'd disappear." She nodded, embarrassed. He sat opposite her. "You're still chasing stories." "Always. But now, people actually answer my calls." He glanced at the screen. "What's this one about?" "Reform bill," she said. "They're using your case as leverage for new police oversight. It might pass." "Might," he repeated. "That's the country's favorite word." She studied him. "You sound like you've given up." "No," he said. "I just stopped confusing change with progress." Maya leaned forward. "Then what do you call this?" He looked out the window. A young black teenager crossing the street, hoodie soaked, head high. 2 officers stood near a cruiser, watching but not moving. The boy passed. No confrontation, no stop, just distance, fragile but unbroken. Malcolm turned back. "I call that a beginning." That evening, Evelyn joined him at the old church downtown, where a community forum had been organized. Folding chairs filled the hall. Activists, teachers, parents, off-duty officers. On stage, the pastor introduced the topic. "Where do we go from here?" Malcolm sat in the back, listening. People spoke, voices raw, hopeful, afraid. A mother recounted how her son still flinched at sirens. A retired officer admitted he'd looked away too often. When someone spotted Malcolm, the room stirred. The pastor called out, "Judge Reese, would you share something?" He hesitated, then rose. His voice was low but steady. "When I was stopped that night, I thought silence would protect me. It didn't. I thought my title would shield me. It didn't. And when the truth finally came out, I thought justice would fix it. It hasn't." He scanned the crowd, faces of every shade and age. "But I learned something simple. Systems survive on predictability. They count on fatigue. Every time we speak, every time we demand to be seen, we break their rhythm. That's the work, not winning, interrupting." Applause followed, not thunderous, but enduring, like a heartbeat. Later, walking home, Malcolm paused by the same intersection where it had all begun. Streetlights reflected off the wet pavement. He could almost see the ghost of that night. Red and blue lights, the flashlight beam, the voice demanding his license. He whispered into the quiet, "I forgive you, but I will not forget you." A car passed, its headlights sweeping over him, then vanished into the distance. Evelyn slipped her arm through his. "Ready to go home?" "Yes," he said. Finally. They walked the rest of the way in silence. Weeks later, the reform bill passed by a narrow vote. Maya's article carried the headline, "From Silence to Statute, the Case That Forced the City to Listen." Malcolm read it once, folded the paper, and placed it in a drawer. Then, he opened the window, letting in the faint hum of the city at night, restless, imperfect, alive. He sat back, eyes closed, and for the first time in a long time, felt something close to peace. The courthouse stood silent beneath the morning haze, its marble steps washed pale by years of rain and protest. No cameras, no crowds, just pigeons and the distant hum of traffic. Malcolm Reese hadn't been there in months, yet this morning, his steps led him back as if drawn by unfinished gravity. He wore no suit, no robe, only a coat against the chill. In his hand, a folded letter addressed to the city clerk, request to decline resignation. Inside, the echo of his footsteps filled the hall like an unanswered question. He paused at the courtroom door, the same one where his name had once commanded order, the same one where it had been spoken with suspicion, with defiance. He entered quietly, rows of benches, the judge's bench, the seal of the state above it, solemn and indifferent. He took a seat in the gallery, where he had once watched the system turn on itself. From the far end, a janitor pushed a mop bucket down the aisle, humming. When he recognized Malcolm, he froze. "Judge Reese, just Malcolm," he said. The man smiled faintly. "Didn't think I'd see you here again." "I didn't either." They stood in silence for a moment, listening to the hum of fluorescent lights. "You did something," the janitor said finally. "Things feel different now." Malcolm looked at him. "Different how?" "People think twice," the man said. "Not enough, but twice is better than never." Malcolm nodded. "That's something." Later that day, he met Maya Torres at the City Square Cafe. Her latest story was trending again, an investigative piece about a police training overhaul named the Reese Directive. "You didn't tell me they were naming it after you," she said. "I didn't ask them to. You inspired it." He stirred his coffee, watching the swirl dissolve into dark stillness. "Inspiration is what they give the dead when they're done listening." "Maybe," she said, "but it's still movement." He looked up, a faint smile at the edge of wariness. "Movement without memory repeats itself." Maya leaned forward. "Then you keep reminding them." He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and handed her a folded envelope. "My resignation letter. Publish it." Her brow furrowed. "You're sure?" "Yes. They need to understand that truth doesn't retire when the case closes. It leaves so it can't be owned." That evening, his letter appeared online. It wasn't grand, only 3 paragraphs. "Justice, as we've practiced it, has become a performance of belief, rather than a pursuit of truth. I no longer wish to play a role that demands composure when conscience demands. Resistance. The law remains sacred only if it remembers the faces it once ignored." It spread quietly, shared not by networks but by people, teachers, community leaders, strangers who remembered his story. Weeks later, Evelyn found him in the garden, trimming the small maple they'd planted years ago. "It's growing," she said. He nodded. "Roots find a way, even through concrete." She smiled softly. "You think they'll remember you?" He clipped a branch, eyes on the horizon. "They don't need to, as long as they remember what was wrong." A breeze passed through the leaves, scattering light across the soil. They stood together in the quiet, no longer waiting for redemption, only the slow, honest rhythm of life continuing. At dusk, Malcolm sat alone on the porch. Distant sirens rose, faded, rose again, the city's heartbeat, flawed but persistent. He whispered to the dark, a final verdict rendered without gavel or applause. "Truth doesn't win, it survives." And with that, he closed his eyes, letting the evening carry what words could not.